In a moment here, I'm going to turn it over to our peer advisor leaders, also known as PALs. Before I do, let me tell you a little bit more about them. Part of New Student Connections, PALs are a team of student leaders that are here to help you during your time at USF by giving you some individualized support and connecting you to resources on campus. Each week, these virtual chats will be hosted by two different PALs, so y'all will have a chance to connect with some of the great student leaders interested in helping you as new and current bulls. The first PAL joining us is Trevor, who is a third-year student majoring in chemistry. Take it away, Trevor.
Hey, appreciate it, Rick. So, just like he said, my name is Trevor, and it's good to be here with y'all. I'm a third year student majoring in chemistry, and I'm from Miami, Florida. Today, we'll be learning more about all things related to studying one on one, and that's including the general breakdown of a study session, reading strategies, and also memory strategies. By the end of the session, you all will have some great tools and information for studying that you can use for your upcoming exams. Now, today we have someone with us who is an expert when it comes to this topic. So please allow me to introduce Striker E. Banks, a graduate assistant in the Academic Success Center. We'll be in great hands learning more from him.
Thank you, Trevor. So as he said, my name is Striker. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a graduate assistant in the Academic Success Center. I'm currently pursuing a Master of Arts in Teaching for grades 6 to 12 math education, and I'm super excited to talk with you all today about how to make the most of your study session. So, the art of studying. It's something that every student is familiar with. Still, one of the major questions or concerns that we get is, how do I make the most out of my study session? I know at least most of us, myself included, have experienced the frustration of, going down to sit and study. You have your notes, your highlighters, your book, everything, and then you spend 3, 4, 5 hours studying, focusing, learning, taking notes. Yeah, feels good. And then once the 5 hours are up, you realize you don't remember a single thing you just studied. And that can be super frustrating, right? Spending so much time and effort into studying and feeling like you are getting nowhere. But don't worry, because that's exactly why we're here tonight in this How to College episode, to find a better way. A really great way to actually start studying is to form a study group. The whole purpose of a study group is just to have a community to lean on and get support from as you progress through the course. So members of your study group can be classmates as well as students who are in other sections of the same course. And remember, just because classes might be virtual this semester, you can still go into the People's tab on your Canvas and see who's in the course and send them a DM through Canvas. You can reach out via your USF email, and you can even post discussion posts on your class Canvas page and just ask if anyone would be interested in forming a study group. As you begin to form your study group, I would recommend keeping it small. That's for no more than 5 people. This is because it'll be easier to coordinate study schedules, but also so that once you get together, everyone has a space to share and contribute. Once you actually get your group together, the first thing you want to do is set a specific day and time that you will meet every week. Having a set time will keep everyone accountable to know that this day and time is when we meet to do what we have to do. At your first meeting, you want to set your expectations for what the group will look like. And by that I mean, will you be a group who studies silently and then someone speaks up when they need help? Or will you all do your homework outside of the time and then bring your issues ready to discuss when it's time to go? And as you start to go to each individual meeting, you want to set a specific goal for what you want to get done in that lesson, in that time period, and just set someone to be in charge of making sure that you all stay focused and stay on track. As we go through the presentation, keep in mind that all of the strategies that I'll be discussing are just as useful for a study group as they are for individual studying. So, the 2 major components to studying. The first one is going to be your time management piece. This diagram is the intense study sessions plan, and this is just a method that we find has been really effective for helping students structure how they study. With the ISS, you actually break your time block into 4 intervals. First, you spend 2 to 5 minutes setting a goal for what you want to get done. It is critical that your goal be specific and measurable. So for example, I want to be able to outline the 10 major concepts in chapter 3. Not only is that a specific goal, but also it's measurable, because by the time my 40 minutes is up, I'll be able to say, yes, I can outline the 10 major principles, or not so much. Next, you'll spend 30 to 40 minutes actually working towards your goal. Later in the PowerPoint, we'll cover some strategies for this, so we'll get back to this. After 40 minutes is up, comes the 2 steps that really make the ISS effective. First, you take a 10-minute break. Walk away from the material. Eat a snack. Watch a third of a Netflix show. Talk to your friends. It doesn't matter, but walk away from it. And then after your break, come back and review. See if you can remember the things you studied. If we're using the same example of being able to outline the major concepts, see if you can explain those concepts to your roommate or summarize the concepts. This break review piece is what makes this so effective, because the break makes sure that you're not looking at the same material for hours on end and getting fatigued. And the review gives you a built-in component where you get to check that the study strategy that you've been using is working. Because either you'll be able to say, yes, I can outline my 10 concepts, and then great, restart the clock, move on to the next section or the next subject or have dinner. Or you'll go, I don't really remember what I studied. And then no problem. All it means is that you need a better goal, or you just need to tweak your study strategy a bit. And there's no issue with that. Also, the really cool thing about the ISS is that the amount of time that you do things for doesn't matter so much as the order you do them in. So for example, when I study, I spend 2 to 5 minutes setting a goal, then an hour working towards my goal, then I take a 15-minute break and a 10-minute review session. So when I organize my blocks, they look like an hour and a half. Remember that this can also be used for how you structure a group meeting. So, you can use the 10-minute break as a socializing time and then the 10 minutes review to just see what you had issues with. And then finally, if you've ever heard of the Pomodoro method, this is basically the same concept. I know there's also an app that you can download, like the Pomodoro app, or it's like the tomato timer, and this will be what you need it to be. So the second component to studying is going to be your study strategy, as in how are you actually engaging with the material? We know that one of the big challenges that students have, myself included, is pulling relevant information from large chunks of text. Believe me, every day I wake up and I wish that I could just take my textbook and, just soak in the information, but it doesn't work like that. Fortunately, there are strategies that we can use to help turn reading into a more active and engaging learning experience. And one of these strategies is the Parrot method. So this method is just 6 steps that you can go through while you're reading to help make sure that you are staying engaged with the content and that you come away from the text with a firm grasp of what you've actually read. I'm going to start with saying this is a more time-consuming method and it is intentional, but believe me, the payoff is absolutely worth it. Once I learned Parrot method a couple of years ago, this is the only way I read textbooks now. So to do the Parrot method, the first step is a preview. Let's say you have to read chapter 5. So in the preview stage, all you do is you just flip through chapter 5, look at the headlines, any subheadings, bolded text, graphs. You really just want to get an understanding of what this chapter is about, what you're going to be reading. If there's a summary or conclusion at the end, you'll also want to read that. As you're doing this preview stage, you can also do the next step, which is ask and activate. So as you see this material and you start to understand what this chapter is about, start to ask yourself if anything's familiar to activate those neurons. Once you get an idea of what's going on, ask yourself, how does this relate to the chapter I just read? Or how does this relate to the discussion we had in class the other day? Once you've completed the first 2, you're going to go on and read. Now for the read, it is super important that you just pick a bite-sized chunk. Personally, I do 1 paragraph, maybe 2. And when you read, don't highlight, don't take notes. If you have a couple questions, you can drop them down, but just read your bite-sized chunk. Once you've read it, review. So this will just be making sure you can paraphrase what it is, or making sure you can understand what you just read. Personally, my favorite way to review is I summarize everything that I just read into 1, maybe 2 sentences. Once you've done the review and you're able to pick out the important information, that's when you organize. So here's when you grab your highlighters, your colored pens, you can make notes, flashcards, concept maps, however you need to organize this important information in a way that works for you. You'll repeat the cycle a couple times, and once you've gone a couple pages, then you're going to go to the test stage. So just like with the ISS, the super important part about this test period is making sure that you are staying engaged and being able to check yourself and make sure that what you've been doing is actually working for you. Again, I'll start with saying I know it can seem overwhelming at first and it will feel very clunky the first couple times you try it, but believe me, after a few times, it just becomes second nature and it is totally worth it. And finally, we've talked about how to structure your time, and we've also talked about how you can pull relevant information from a lot of text. But sometimes there are subjects or topics that just require you to memorize a lot of information, and that can be a really daunting task. I know that flashcards are a really popular way of memorizing, and that's perfectly cool. But what if we were to take flashcards a step further? I present to you concept maps. Now, I know that most of us have probably seen concept maps in high school. Maybe you did one for your class and then you threw it out, never looked back. But I challenge you to bring concept maps back and bring them back in style. Why? Well, concept maps require you to take the information that you have to learn and figure out how to organize that information yourself. This can be challenging because it means that you have to determine what to do with information. You have to figure out how different pieces of information connect and what the relationships are. And then you have to figure out how to represent those relationships as a clear visual in a working format. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but by doing these steps and by literally being able to visualize the relationships between information, you actually get a much deeper and much more profound learning experience. Additionally, if you are in a test or you need to recall the information, it's much easier to visualize, the picture that you drew or the concept map that you drew than it is to visualize the 100 flashcards that you wrote up. What am I talking? Oh, here we go. Concept maps are also super important if you are doing, or super useful if you're doing long projects like a research paper, because you can take the major concepts, for example, put them each on a slide on a PowerPoint, print out the PowerPoint, and then physically manipulate the concepts until you get a flow that you feel works best for you. So we've reached the end. I know it was a lot of information, but don't worry. If you have filled out the attendance form, you'll be getting an email from the Academic Success Center after this that will have a copy of each of the strategies we talked about, a link so that you can sign up for a Study Skills Mentor appointment, and also contact information for our services. Our Study Skills Mentors, I love to talk about them. They are super useful. They are experts in study strategies, time management skills, things that we've talked about today, and also additional methods. And I always recommend that everybody go see a Study Skills Mentor at least once. So with that, thank you so much for paying attention. I am super excited to answer any questions that you have. And as always, go Bulls.
Thank you, Stryker, for that presentation. Shoot, that was a lot of information, but I think I'm gonna actually use the Study Skills Mentor too, because everybody can learn a thing or two. All right, so we have a couple questions in the Q&A section. So Stryker, the first question of the night is, how many hours should I study for each of my classes?
That is a great question. And it's a really hard question too, right? So you can look on the internet and see what other people think about, hours you should be studying per credit hour, but it really just depends on how you feel about the subject. So for example, I know for me, I need to study less hours for my statistics class than I need to do for my informational technology class. Why? Because I'm not as engaged with information technology and sometimes it's harder for me to understand, so I just need to put more hours in. The best thing you can do is at the beginning of the semester, start setting out times for studying and make sure that you overestimate how much time you need. If you think you need 3 hours for a class, book 5. Think you need 5, book 7. Because as you go along through the semester, it'll be a lot easier to cut back on your study times if you realize, like, I don't need all this time for calculus. But it would be a lot harder to start increasing and finding more time in your schedule, especially as schedules start to fill up throughout the semester.
All right, nice. Next question is, how can I balance my studying and my classes?
Great question. The best thing to do is, we always recommend in the Academic Success Center that you use different types of planners. So a semester-long planner, a weekly or monthly planner, and also a daily planner. I don't have pictures with me, but I can show you my semester planner right here. There we go, everything. So on this, I have all of my due dates for the semester. That helps me figure out when I'm going to have a busy week before the week actually rolls up. So once you have like your whole semester set out with due dates so that you know when you're busy, you can start setting a weekly schedule, right? If you have one class where all the due dates are on Wednesdays, you'll want to make sure your study time comes before Wednesdays. You have another class where everything's due Sunday, you'll want to make sure your study times are due before Sunday. But the moral of the story here is really you're just going to have to get a planner out, whether it's physical, whether it's an app on the phone, and really just start to plan out and make sure that everything lines up in a way that's useful for you. If you know you're more productive at night, don't give yourself 6, 7 a.m. study sessions. That's not going to work. But if you do need help, again, this is something that our study skills mentors are trained in, and they will absolutely help you figure out what your schedule looks like and what could be a better schedule for you to have.
All right, the next question is, I think a lot of people could relate to this question too. I didn't really study in high school, and I'm nervous about how much studying I'm going to need to do now. Do you have any suggestions to where to get started?
Yeah, so kind of related to my first one, which is it's always going to be hard to know how much studying you need to do for a class, but I can promise you, you will need to do more than you did in high school. So the best place to get started, again, is to just figure out what your normal week looks like in terms of specific times you have classes, specific times you have work, specific times you have, I don't know, if you have a student org meeting, and then just start to fill in blocks around that time based on how much time you think you need to study for a subject. We do have a lot of resources here at USF to help students because, as Trevor said, this is something we all relate to when we move to college. But again, study skills mentors, I'm gonna big them up every chance I get. They will sit down with you and help you figure out what a good schedule will look like for you. But really just overestimate how much time you need and start to build a schedule for you that's consistent from week to week.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to add just a little bit on to that. I remember coming straight out of high school to college. I was taking these science classes and I did not study at all. So I'm pretty much in the same boat as what the question said. And then, when I told myself, all right, it's time to study, it's time to get to work, time to start the grind, I was like, I'll do it in 5 minutes. 5 minutes past, I'll do it at 7. And then I just kept prolonging it, and I just ended up not doing any work at all. So if you face the same problem as what I did, one thing that you could try to do is sort of trick yourself. So what I did was I told myself, okay, I'm just going to look at the material for about 10 minutes and then continue doing whatever I do. As long as you actually make that step to actually start studying or looking at the material whatsoever, you'll pretty much be in the mode or pretty much be in the zone where it's like, okay, all right, I could go longer now. And then that's where you come in with the actual studying schedule that you plan for yourself. But I always struggle with that first step, and I just did that to help myself. So I thought, maybe it'll help you guys as well. So then the next question is, how do I set up an appointment with these mentors?
I love these questions. So after this session, again, if you filled out the attendance form, you'll be getting a direct email from the Academic Success Center, and it will have a link in it where you can click on that link and set up an appointment with any of our mentors. I just want to point out that in addition to study skills mentors who help you focus on studying skills like, again, how to read text, time management, procrastination, we also at the ASC offer other services such as help with any forms of writing, and we also offer tutoring for specific subjects. But you'll be getting that link in an email as long as you fill out the attendance form. So make sure to fill it out.
Well, Striker, you answered 2 questions in 1. We'd love to see it. The next one is, I'm really bad at procrastinating. Any tips?
I too am bad at procrastinating. I'm going to be real with you. Something that I find really hard is starting on a piece of homework or an assignment that I don't find too interesting or that I don't want to start on. It's something that you do have to work on, but the way that worked best for me was I started giving myself motivation for, after the period. So for example, I would say if I sit down and work on this assignment for 50 minutes, I can watch a Netflix episode for half an hour. If I don't do the assignment or I'm not engaged with the assignment, I just got to go to bed with no Netflix. Some people, things like that work best for them, kind of motivating yourself, tricking yourself, as Trevor said, in different ways. But if that is something that you consistently have issues with, again, study skills mentors, this is a huge area that we see in study skills mentor students is time management and procrastination. But But yeah, I would mainly start with like, just trying to give yourself a reason, a good reason that you love to just go ahead and do the assignment piece by piece, which is the other part too. If you do things piece by piece, it's a lot less daunting than if you try to do like your 5-hour assignment in one go, 6 hours before the deadline.
All right, gotcha. The next question is, and as we approaching exam week, I think a lot of people could relate to being overwhelmed with their homework and also studying with their tests. So do you have any tips for them?
My first tip is actually going to be to make sure you build in time to relax. Because if you fry your brain, it won't be any use to you. Remember, your brain is like any other muscle. You wouldn't run a marathon for 3 days straight, so your brain can't operate on and on and on for 3 days straight. So a really good way to make sure that you build in time, again, is to make sure that you have that weekly schedule that is consistent from week to week. Because with that, you'll be able to break out the amount of work that you're doing so that you're not doing it all in one day, and also ensure that you are leaving space to wind down at the end of the day, or you're leaving at least 1 day a week when you don't have anything to do, unless something that works better for you is having all your nights free, like, hey, whatever works best. But just planning, making a plan that will work for you and sticking to it. And if you make a plan, if you make a little week-long plan, like, yeah, I'm gonna study at this time, do homework at this time, and as you start to go along this plan, it's like, this doesn't really work for me, no problem. Switch it up, adjust the times, make it something that does work best for you. That's kind of what college is all about, kind of finding things that work best for you. And again, if you need help with managing the amount of workload, study skills mentors. Every chance I get, I'm gonna say it out loud.
I think y'all should really check out Study Skills Mentors to make Striker happy. All right, but next question is, how have y'all figured out what study methods work for you?
Try and fail. There are actually kind of two ways to do it. The first one is to try a study method, and if you're like, whoa, this absolutely is not my style, throw it out, try a new one. But a lot of the times, what we'll do is we'll try a study method and be like, if you reflect on it, you realize, okay, some parts worked for me, but other parts, not so much. And the beauty in it is, as I was talking about the ISS, how I said you can change intervals and stuff, you can edit a study method so that it works best for you. Again, if you see our study skills mentors, they will show you other study strategies that I didn't talk about today. But also they'll tell you go give it a try, note down the parts that work for you and the components that don't work for you. Come back next week and we'll figure out how to tweak the parts that don't work so that it works better for you. As I said, when I do the ISS, I do 5-minute goal setting, an hour of work, 15-minute break. I have friends that they have to do like 10 minutes work, 5-minute break, 10 minutes work, 5 minutes break, 10 minutes work, 5-minute break, then a review. And that's what works for them, And even for me, it can be different from subject to subject. Subjects where I'm much more engaged, I can spend a longer time before getting fatigued. Subjects where, it is hard to get through the text, I need more breaks during my session. That's perfectly fine. But it's really just trying and tweaking things as you go along and being kind of reflective about what would be better for you.
Yeah, that trying and tweaking thing, I definitely went through it. You're definitely not going to find what works best for you as soon as you start. I think it really took me by the end of my second year, so the second semester when I was taking organic chemistry 2 and calculus 2, I really figured out everything. For me, how I go about it is that I always start studying at a certain time every day. So every day I was like, okay, since I'm always busy throughout the day, I'm gonna take a break between like 5 and 9, work out, eat, sleep, or take a nap, excuse me, whatever I need to do, and then start at 9. With that, my body's always used to, all right, it's 9 o'clock, it's time to go. And then I try to study every day, so that every day of a different material, so that it's like, okay, I'm not falling behind in these classes. And I do a modified version of the ISS Striker showed, the intense study sessions, where it's like I do 30 minutes, then talk to my friends for max 15, and then come back to the material 30 minutes, and then out 15. And then having a goal set every single time you actually start studying is really good because you're sort of want to move in some sort of direction and have an end goal so that by the end of the night you could be like, all right, I did something, I accomplished my goal, time to clock out, head out, go to sleep. So I believe that's my study strategy, excuse me. All right. Now, I think this next question is something that happens to every student, at least twice, if not once a semester. What should I do if I'm falling behind in my studies? I have so much to do.
Yeah, that is something we've all experienced. And, you know, it's hard from person to person because it kind of depends on why you fall behind. But the major thing is just remember, first and foremost, that all of the resources here at USF, including your professors or TAs, we are here to help you. Sometimes life happens, and that's okay. You know, speak to people, let us know what's going on. Sometimes, you know, you didn't plan too well, and that's okay. The best way to kind of get back on track is, again, it's going to be this planning, organization, laying things out. There's kind of no way around this. You might have to do more work this week and next week to kind of catch up. And again, speak to some professors. I've had a professor that once let me hand in a paper 3 weeks late because, you know, life was rough, but he knew I was going to do the work, so that was okay. But I wouldn't have gotten that extension if I hadn't been like, hey, sir, help me out here. So again, reach out to people, but also, as I've kind of been saying, there's really no way to work around you having to really make these plans, you know, a semester plan with your due dates, a weekly plan that's consistent where you have these built-in times that you stick to. And if you need help sorting any of that out, who do you see? Study skills mentors and our professors too, but.
Next question is, I often find myself getting distracted while studying. This is everybody. I mess around on my phone or computer. Any solutions?
Yes. So I've always heard about this app and I never did it. It's called Forest. It looks kind of like this. I'm not sure if anyone can see, but so it's this app where you get to grow a plant as long as you're not on your phone. And I'd always heard about this because I was like, I'm not on my phone that much when I'm studying. Like, it don't be distracting me that much. And I downloaded this app like 3 days ago, and I did not realize how often I'll literally just kind of get bored of reading or kind of get like, you know, bored of typing and just pick up my phone to open Twitter for a second or half an hour, you know? So I would absolutely recommend this app because all you do is you'd be like, oh, I want to study for 40 minutes. And it goes, great. Don't pick up your phone for these 40 minutes and you'll grow this beautiful plant. And the more plants you grow, you get this like beautiful forest. And if you pick up your phone, you kill the plants, which, you know, that's a big motivator, killing something. But, you know, if you also don't want to do the app thing, if you're more of a traditional person, having a partner to study with, having a roommate, you know, my girlfriend, for example, she helps to keep me accountable. Someone that you sit down and even if you're not studying the same thing, you just hold each other accountable. Like, hey, we're going to work for 45 minutes, an hour, half an hour, whatever. Then we'll have a break. Then we got to get back to work. You know, a study buddy. You know, that's another great way to just keep yourself accountable. And especially in this virtual times, remember that your study buddy can be someone, you know, just like this. We're sitting over Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever, just kind of making sure the other person isn't goofing off. But that's, you know, just having that piece of accountability will really, really, really help you stay focused because, you know, you don't have another choice.
Yeah, that accountability piece goes a very, very long way. When I'm studying with my friends, or at least, you know, we all have like different friends who go about their studying habits. So with one friend, every time I'm with him, I'm like, okay, we cannot be, if you see me on your phone, or if you see me on the phone, you gotta put it away, like take it out of my hand. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for you. So in that sort of sense, it's like, okay, cool, we're not distracted, we keep each other accountable. But if you have nobody to keep you accountable, keep yourself accountable. As Striker said, you could try the app of Forest. Shoot, I never heard about it, but I'm gonna download it right now, honestly. I'm gonna try it out. But what I do is that I do the concept outside, out of mind. So what I do, I sort of like put my phone in my book bag or put it under my bed or someplace where I cannot hear it vibrate, or I'll just forget it existed overall because I'm not hearing it, I cannot see it. So with that outside of mind, you're more in tune and you won't be distracted by a little vibration or a sound. It's like, oh, okay, let me check Instagram real quick. That real quick becomes 5 minutes, then 30 minutes, then you wasted your time.
I just wanted
So
to add back on to that one little piece again. I guess I'm selling Forest now. There's also part of Forest where you can track, like put tags on your plants and be like, oh, I was studying this subject, studying this subject, studying this subject. And at the end of the week or as you progress, you can actually look at how much time you're spending on each of your subjects. So if you're really interested in figuring out how much time you normally spend doing homework or work for a subject, by using this app, or really, any sort of app where you can kind of keep track of what your time is going towards, that will really help you figure out how to block your time. Because, for example, I have a nice little schedule, but I realized this last week that one of my classes, I do not have nearly enough time in my schedule, and that's why I'm falling behind. So by using this app, I'm able to figure out how much time I normally need in a week and then put that into my schedule. So that's another really great use of Forest.
all right, next question is, it feels challenging to connect with other people for study groups. Any tips? Have y'all done this?
Yeah, it's hard being in a virtual world as humans. We always want the physical contact, the face-to-face. It's a lot easier to have conversations when we're in the same room than it is over the internet. But even though it's harder, that doesn't mean it can't happen. And trust me, even, we've all had to kind of get used to this virtual world. But as you start using these technologies more and more and start meeting with people virtually, it becomes a lot easier. So one of the big ways to connect, especially if you already know the people, again, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. But if you're trying to make new friends in your classes, your Canvas page is a great resource because most of your Canvas pages will have a little people tab. You can click on the tab and see who's in your class. You can connect with people via, as I said in the presentation, you can send out Canvas DMs. A lot of professors will let you post a discussion in the Canvas page and just be like, hey, looking for people to study with or just someone to hang out with, please, anything. And that's a really good way to connect. Also, I guess if you are on social media, a lot of people have social media these days, especially now that everything's so virtual. And that's really another tool that you can use to help meet people, as long as you don't use your social media to procrastinate on your homework, because that wouldn't be good.
I feel as if you're calling some people out with that. That's perfectly fine. We all done
I'm
that.
calling myself out, honestly.
All right, next. What is the best time to start studying before a test or exam?
Not the day before. Don't leave it to the last minute. It might work once, might work 4 or 5 times, but especially if the material is important for your future or if there's a cumulative exam at the end, cramming will not put it in long term. Again, this is something that might work best for different people, and it depends on how much you can stand at one time. So if there's a subject that you can do for maybe, 3 or 4 hours with breaks, I would start studying maybe a couple days in advance. There's this other subject where like you can get an hour, hour and a half max, and you are tired of it. You probably need to start like 2-3 weeks out, and that's perfectly fine. Again, it's really kind of understanding your relationship to a subject and how difficult you find things, and how you can fit things into your schedule, what your schedule normally looks like, and what works best for you. I am someone who I learn better by doing an intense session, like a more lengthy session where I have all my notes and looking at everything. Some of my friends, they need to just space it out. 1 hour a day, 2 weeks straight. It's practice, right? This is what college is about, just finding what works best for you. No same suite of strategies will be exactly the same for all of us. But cramming is not the way to go.
I repeat, cramming is not the way to go. I made that mistake too many times. But while I was in organic chemistry, I sort of figured out that, oh, okay, if I study, 3 days before, I would get an average grade. I would get a C. I'm like, okay, let me study a little bit earlier. So then what I found works best for me, especially since that class is very difficult in content, is that I studied a weekend. Let's say the exam was on Friday. I studied a week before on that weekend, so that's Saturday. And then I just put some work in every day, doing some problems. And then there's something called spatial repetition, where it's like if you practice doing something um, over a long time period or just a time period in general, you're more bound to remember it long term. So that's what I had to do for organic chemistry. I always studied a week earlier, and then I started getting A's and B's. But for some classes, like Stryker said, it's like really how engaged are you with the class? For statistics, I think I had my exam sometime last week, but I'm like, I'm really good at math. I'm not really worried about it. So I legit did something 3 days before and then an hour every day up until the exam, and I still got my A. So that's because math is my thing. But it's really what works for you and how you feel about the class. Next question is, oh, and by the way, definitely write down your exam dates at the beginning of the semester so that you will never have an exam sneak up on you.
Yeah.
Okay, next question is, will these study strategies work on my online classes? I'm more of a hands-on learner.
Retweet. So like a big problem I'm having in one of my classes now is I'm actually realizing that for this specific course, I learn a lot better by doing or watching people do than I do by reading. But this course has a lot of reading. So what does Stryker do? Well, it's still important to go ahead and do the work. If your professor assigns non-hands-on work, it's for your benefit, right? You need the knowledge, you need to get the background concepts. But it's 2020, there are lots and lots and lots of resources online for every course. If you learn better by videos, there are videos. If you learn better by watching people do something, there's ways to watch people do things. If you need activities to practice on, those are available on the internet. And if you don't know how to find them, again, speak to your professor, right? They're not just there to give you a grade and tell you, have a great life. They're there to help you through the course, They're there to provide you with whatever you need to be successful. They want you to be successful. We all want you to be successful. So if you need a different resources that aren't just, handed to you right now, just ask someone for help and they can help to guide you. But also, again, just use Google. I've used Google a lot to find resources. I hope that answered the question.
Google is your best friend. I'm not going to lie. All right. Next question is, I'm always trying to make to-do lists to stay organized, but I never stick to them and I fall behind. What can I do about staying on track?
One of the things about to-do lists is once your list gets too long, you kind of don't want to do it. And it gets really hard to keep up with a list that's growing and growing at a fast rate than you cut it down. One way that I deal with to-do lists is I have completely separate, the different spheres of my life have different lists. Because I found that if everything's on one list, I will just brush it aside and start anew, new day, new me. So maybe keeping your list small, right? Only things that need to be on your list, maybe things that need to get done today and tomorrow. Again, something else you can do is an accountability partner, right? If my girlfriend and I both have lists, we can make sure that we're both working through the list. Say okay, we'll decide we're both going to get 3 things done on our list today. Doesn't matter what it is. Another neat trick too, especially if you're not so scared of big lists, is putting small things in there that you're going to get done. Eat breakfast, take a shower, pack my bag. Why? Because honestly, just feeling like you're getting somewhere is a big motivator for a lot of people, right? You always feel a lot better in a class once you start getting good grades, or you feel a lot better about your list once you started crossing things off that day. So those are kind of the tips that I would give for list making. And again, if you don't have a specific accountability partner, say you're living on your own or whatever, I'm sure that there are apps that will give you rewards and maybe cute things or maybe kill your plant if you are or are not crossing things off of a list. Productivity is something that apps are really, there are a lot of apps built for that these days, a lot of free apps, and why not take advantage of those?
Next question is, I always fall asleep when I start studying. Do you have any tips to stay awake without needing to drink coffee or tea?
That's a good one. Well, if you're finding that you are consistently tired, like all the time, there might be something that you might want to go to student health services for, maybe wellness coaching, because there might be another component there that you need to look at. I know once upon a time I had a lot of difficulty sleeping. Like I thought I was sleeping, but then I'd be tired all day long. And I went to wellness coaching, and actually I met Michelle, who's on this call, and she kind of gave me some tips and tricks, and that helped me create a sleeping pattern, which I didn't realize I needed, but I do need apparently, and that keeps me pretty awake throughout the day. If you're falling asleep because it's boring and you're not engaged, happens to all of us, let's be honest. The biggest thing you can do there is, again, take things in bite-sized pieces. Instead of telling yourself, I'm going to sit down for 3 hours and study calculus, bro, do like half an hour a day, 45 minutes, and a 15-minute break after, maybe a little review to make sure you know what you're doing, and move on with your day. Because it's you get a lot more motivated to do something if you're only doing it for a short time, versus if you know you have to sit down for hours and hours, and then you're like, I don't even want to do this. This class doesn't even matter to me, and then it does matter, and then you drop out of college. So, but breaking it up into small pieces would be a great way to do that.
Stryker, that's really crazy because Michelle definitely was talking to me too about my sleep schedule and also my other supervisor. One thing I will say is that keep in mind your day. For example, what I used to do is that my day used to be so busy that I'll leave studying towards nighttime. At nighttime, I'm tired from the whole day, so I just want to sleep. So then what I started learning to do is that I started to find pockets throughout the day just to say, not just to say, but actually review or get a glimpse of my notes for my classes, or just put some like work in 15 minutes, just squeeze in just a little bit of time so that when actually time to actually do the material, and whenever you're available, then it's like you're somewhat familiar about what you're going to go over. Whew, next question. How can we contact you if a student had a conflict and is unable to attend the session?
If you mean the people who organize this, or how can students see the session is being recorded, and I'm sure Trevor or Rick can bounce in on how this recorded session will be provided. If anyone wants to jump in on that right now.
Yep, so yeah, we're recording this session right now. We'll be posting it to the New Student Connections YouTube channel and New Student Connections website. So if you Google either, they should be one of the first options to come up for you, and you can check it out there.
Thanks. If you meant how can they contact me at the Academic Success Center if they missed this, all you do is Google USF ASC, and we're the first link that pops up, and that will have all of our contact information, any appointments that people want to book. There's a big button right there that says book a tutoring appointment. And so you can just Google USF ASC. It's super easy.
All right, next question. Any tips on taking my first exam and not sure if the internet will work? What can I do if my computer decides to have a problem during the exam?
Right, so great, wonderful question, because not only are these normally real problems, but especially now, right? It's super important that we have this technology available. So first, I would say always have a backup plan. So for example, my girlfriend has unlimited data on her phone. So if our Wi-Fi went down right now, and I had to disappear from this meeting, I would just ask her to data share, share her internet with my computer, and I could jump back on. So that's kind of my backup plan at all times, is have a phone nearby that I can just jump on from. If that's not really something that can work for you, remember that USF has a lot of resources. I like to say this a lot, but we do have a lot of free resources for students. And some of those resources include free computer labs. We have right now at least 2 computer labs in the library, as well as I believe the student computer lab in the Marshall Center. So if you are genuinely concerned about your internet not holding up, or your laptop not holding up, or if something happens last minute, make your way there and then jump onto the computers that are available for you at USF. And that you'll be essentially assured a working computer and a good connection to do whatever it is you need to do.
Nice. Now, How do you set realistic goals while studying?
So I just want to add on to the last bit that I mentioned too. If you are experiencing technical issues, it is really, really important to make sure you're in communication with your professor. If anything ever happens at all that could impact your progression in the course, reach out to the professor. They're not scary. They're not there to kick you out of college. They're there to help. Regarding how to set realistic goals, again, that's kind of something that changes from person to person. What is realistic for you and what is attainable for you? I might not be able to do so well. So the first thing is, again, just practice. What are things that you can actually get done? Can I study 3 hours of statistics in a row? I can. Can I study 3 hours of biology in a row? I can't get through half an hour. So I have to be realistic with myself about subjects that I'm good at, subjects that I have a lot of experience in, and subjects that, not so much. A good way to start is, if you're not really sure, just go for it. Say I'll study for an hour. I'll read through 5 pages of this textbook. I'll do one of the homework assignments. And then as you begin to progress through the course, you'll realize that, oh, in this subject, I can read like 6 pages, 10 pages in an hour. In this subject, I can do 20. And then as you move forward with planning your time, you'll have a better understanding of what realistic looks like for you as it pertains to each course and each different sphere.
All right, so I just have 2 things to add or say. One, remember how I told you guys in the beginning, I'm gonna give you a professional or expert on studying. I fulfill my promises. And then 2, this, as far as goal setting and actually staying focused to that goal, it could be very hard, as Stryker said, for a class that's not interesting at all. So one thing you got to do is sort of make studying fun for yourself. So what I do is that I can never study unless I have all my color pens. So whether you use pens or highlighters, you can decorate your notes. I was actually going to study right after this. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but my notes are sort of color coordinated in a sense. So that actually every time I look back at it, it's like, okay, it's not just black, it's not just blue. I'm actually, able to it's easier on the eye to read. Next, and maybe final question is, I have a habit of losing concentration really quickly. Is there any tips to concentrate easier?
So again, if it's something where you consistently, kind of every sphere of your life, except for maybe 1 or 2 things, you can't focus. You're always, all over the place. That might be something that you want to speak to a healthcare provider about, or might want to speak with someone at the wellness center. But if it is specifically this subject is boring to me, I can't focus, it's going to kind of be the same things we've been talking about, right? So doing small chunks of focusing, giving yourself motivation afterwards, just half an hour, and then I get to watch Netflix. An accountability partner, someone who will help to make sure that you're not kind of going off and doing other things instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing. Apps like Forest, where if I jump on my phone, it's going to kill my cute little plant. So, all these different things that we've been talking about are things you can try. And if those don't work for you, or if you want to speak to someone about it, study skills mentors. Again, this is one of the huge areas that we see all the time.
All right, another question just came into the chat. I'm studying online and the different time zones are affecting my sleep cycle, Should I sleep during the day because my classes are all at night?
So again, this is something that's really cropped up this semester for a lot of students. And my answer is going to be, it depends a lot on you. So for example, I study and focus super well at night. So my ideal schedule is sleep all day and then up all night. So if you have a schedule like me, or you're someone how you focus better at night and you don't really have anything to do during the day anyway, yeah, sure. If you're someone that, your social life is during the day and your work is during the day, or you just focus better during the day, then I would start by saying, speak to your professors and let them know that, hey, I'm in this situation where I'd love to be parts of discussion, or I'd love to be part of the class, but that's not a realistic solution for me. And they will absolutely work with you to see, maybe they can record lectures or whatnot. but that would be where I would say you should start, is speak to your professor and get their advice, because a lot of professors will probably be like, yeah, I just record the lectures, watch them after, do the homework on time, live your best life as you can in 2020. But again, it's kind of what will work for you and what's not so feasible for you.
Okay, this is the last question of the night. I get put off from studying when I feel that I'm not doing well in the class. How can I motivate myself?
Yeah, this is a real problem. I experienced this with my classes too. You kind of feel like you're not going that far and you don't feel like you're doing so good, and then you don't really want to keep going. One of the things that you can do is, especially if this is a subject that's relevant to your career path or what you want to be doing, keep your eye on the prize. Just keep your eye on the big picture. Maybe the specific class isn't so important, but you need this class to get to where you want to go next. You need this information to get where you want to get going. And that can kind of help to motivate you. Other times, it's just this, when I talk about the ISS, the parrot method, those components where you test yourself on information. If you test yourself more frequently, you will feel like you're being more successful because you'll have less stuff to review on, and you'll be like, yeah, I do remember that. You know what? Yeah, I can explain these major concepts. Resources online. Again, as I said, there are lots of resources online if you just want to practice things, take practice quizzes, Quizlet, and not only will those help you, rehearse information and get really well versed in the information that you need to know, but also by being successful with, quizzes and testing yourself, you will feel more successful, and that in itself will motivate you. Again, humans do this kind of weird but super useful thing where the better we feel about something, kind of like the more motivated we are to keep doing it, and then it works out in the end for us. So those are kind of some tricks that you can do to help keep yourself motivated.
All right, there's no more questions rolling in. Now, Striker, you said a lot, and you helped a lot of students with all this information. But do you have any final points or any farewell advice to give to everybody?
1, see a study skills mentor. 2, go to your professor's office hours. I will say this every chance I get. You cannot fathom how useful a relationship with a professor can be. As a small example, I just came back from living and working in Spain for a year, all because a professor that I connected with, shared with me information about a program and then wrote me like a bomb recommendation letter. So I picked up and moved to Spain for a year. And that's all because I took the time to get to know my professor. Academically, again, your professors are a wealth of knowledge. They teach these courses because they know what they're doing. So if you start to form a relationship with your professor, and you start to meet with them regularly or every now and again, once you do start to hit hiccups with your learning or your understanding of information, it'll be super easy for you to reach out to them. And if they already know you and they already like you, they'll be a lot more accommodating, if you're kind of last minute or you have like a weird schedule. So absolutely, please, every professor you have, go to their office hours, whether it's in person or virtually. It's worth it.
Those were some great questions, everyone. And thank you to our pal Trevor and our friend Striker Ebanks from the Academic Success Center, or ASC, for helping us all to learn more about all things studying and study groups and study strategies and all those great pieces of advice that y'all gave. To connect with the great campus partners over at the Academic Success Center, you can go ahead and email them at asctampa@usf.edu. For some general questions and to get in touch with them. That's a good place to contact them. And then, like we mentioned earlier, if you have filled out the attendance link, which we will send into the Q&A one more time for y'all, you will be getting a follow-up email from the folks at the ASC with some helpful tips, resources, and a couple helpful pieces of knowledge for you all and around the topic of studying. And if you're watching this as a recording after the fact, you can go ahead and email asctampa@usf.edu, and they'll be more than happy to go ahead and send you that follow-up email regardless. So go ahead and reach out to them either way. To stay connected with us at New Student Connections, you can go ahead and follow us at on Instagram at USF_NSC, or email us at newstudent@usf.edu, both of which are currently displayed on your screen as well. We hope to see you all at our next How to College chat this upcoming Monday, September 21st at 8 p.m., where we'll be learning more about student employment here at USF and kind of navigating some of those opportunities. So if that's of interest to you, we hope to see you there. For more information about these virtual chats and other great opportunities for all Bulls this fall, please download the Go Bulls Guide app, where you'll find the USF Student and Family Guide. In there, you'll have some helpful information and resources, as well as an all-encompassing schedule of events that you can take advantage of this semester. So it's definitely a great resource to tap into if you have not already. And if you prefer a browser version as opposed to an app on your phone, there is a URL currently displayed on your screen right now. Thanks again for joining us to learn more about How to College, and as always, go Bulls!